Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to play around a little bit more with Quixel. We're going to get into the layer system and add a little bit more detail to our house. You're going to find that this is a pretty cool way of adding more detail, some wear and tear, or just kind of adding layers and blending things together so that your house has a little bit more detail than just sort of looking like this brand spanking just built house. If you missed how to use Quixel in the first place, get our house into Quixel, and then start putting our textures on it, you can check out Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization. And video number 6 right here is where we did all of that with Quixel. So let's go ahead and jump right into getting our stuff done here. Okay, so this is our house. This is where we kind of left off last time. Now we've got some wear and aging done on these pillars just by simply using one of the, go ahead and bring that up right here, by using one of the smart materials that was inside of Quixel. And that was what this was right here, smart material, aged and worn wood, okay? And you can see that they've used sort of this layering system to be able to bring that out. Okay, let me go ahead and close that part up. And the door, we kind of did the same thing with the door, just using previous materials. Okay, so I think what I want to do is start with the roof right here. And go ahead and get my head out of the way. Okay, with this house right here, you can see that the red paint actually worked out pretty well on this metal, but there is some repetitiveness because we ended up tiling it down quite a bit in order to get it to look appropriate on the top of our roof. But I want to add a little bit of a different material to kind of give it some texture to it, some wear, make it look like this house has been around a while. So I'm going to jump over here to my roof, right here in the various folders that I've created underneath the house. And I'm going to hit the down arrow here. And you can see that the roof has, again, all of our different materials assigned to it. And what I could do is I could go into my house right here, shut everything off so I could just play around with the roof. But since I'm just working with the rooftop, I am just going to go ahead and leave everything visible. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add another folder here into the roof section. So I'm going to just click on the Warren metal roof. And down here I'm going to add a group again. And this group is going to fall in underneath our roof here. I'm going to make sure that it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag and, not that one, that's the wrong one. Drop that right back where it was. Click on the roof here, on the metal roof, and I'm going to drop that into the group. I'm going to rename this group, just call it the metal roof. Alright, now the color ID mask that we used here, we want to apply to everything that we put in this folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this off right here, this mask stack, and if we take a look at it, we see that it's the bright red. If you ever forget what your material ID was, color ID that you assigned to the various parts of the house, you can always come over here to this tab here, click on material ID, and now you see everything that has been assigned the specific colors. PBR metalness brings you back to this view right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take off this mask stack right here. I'm just right click on it. I'm going to delete it. Okay, delete that ID mask. And what's going to happen is that material is going to be kind of all over the place now. And what I'm going to do is right here on this folder, I'm going to click on that folder. I'm going to add the color ID to that folder so that everything in the folder now will have that color ID assigned to it, and everything starts to come back. You see that now just the rooftop again has that. The next thing I want to do is I want to find a material that I want to apply to the top of it. In this case, I think having something like moss growing on the top of it would kind of depict a little bit of age. We could also add some other scratching and wear and tear, but the roof already kind of has that with that material that we assigned to it. So what I'm going to do is, you can find it in your online, and if you type in moss, if you wanted to use something like moss, or you can find something else to apply the top of it. And for whatever reason. Oh, it's because I have imperfections selected here. So let me uncheck that. Actually, go back to all. Type in moss. And I have several different types of moss that'll pop up. I'm going to use this mossy grass. It just kind of has that color that I'm looking for that'll contrast against the roof. I already have it downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to my local library. But I wanted to be able to show you where to find it. And again, I'm going to uncheck the imperfections. Type in moss in my search for my library. I'm going to find it. I'm going to go ahead and select it. And it's going to go into the folder here, but it's going to go into the wrong spot. So I'm going to click and drag it and drop it onto the metal roof folder. And it's going to be placed on top of the roof itself. And again, the scale is going to be pretty large. I'm going to drop this down to the probably 0.05, scale that down a little bit more. Kind of just give me this nice smooth look here, like a carpet across the top. But it covers up everything on my roof, right? But we want to have it sort of broken up, kind of patchy. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign another type of mask to this, okay? And what I'm going to do is right here where the mask, where the material is, I'm going to just make sure it's selected. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to add a mask stack onto my material here. And then over here, I'm going to select, when you have the mask selected here, I'm going to select this right here to add mask component. And I'm going to add noise to this. And I'm going to pick one of these whirly ones here. I think I'm going to go with, I'll try whirly one. Okay. And when I do that, it's going to come in with some presets on it already. You can see that it's kind of broken up everything on top of my roof already. But I'm going to change this up a little bit. I want the moss to be a little bit more distinctive on it. So I'm going to select my amplitude. And I'm just going to go ahead and bump this up somewhere around 5 or 6. And this is sort of a preference thing. You can adjust these however you want. And then it's going to rebuild down here. You can start to see that I get this kind of look here. I'm going to adjust the frequency up quite a bit, just because I want to break it up a little bit more. And I'm not sure that this is really as smooth as I want it to look. You can also play around with octaves, I believe. Let's see here. Bump that up a little bit. That's going to kind of give me a little bit more breaking up of it, a little bit more random. But I think maybe I'm going to try a different one of these whirlies. Let's see, maybe this one. You can try some of these different presets and see how they look. That one's getting a little closer to what I want. Let's see what a simplex looks like, just to see. You know what? I think simplex is probably going to be what I go with. I get enough randomness there. And then you can kind of play around with these different settings to try to adjust it to your preference. I'm going to be okay with this for now. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like that. And with that, you can see that we have quite a bit of randomness. It breaks up the repetitiveness of the tiling, and it gives us kind of a different look. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to show you how to use the mask stacks and some of the other features over here that we can kind of play with when we add these additional mask stacks onto the layer, and some of the things that we can add into them. And I'm going to do that by playing around with the wall. Okay, so I'm going to close this up for now, and I'm going to select my walls. Okay, now my walls, I have the brick wall. I'm going to mess around with the outer brick wall area. So I'm going to do the same thing. Select the walls. I'm going to add a new folder to it, and I'm going to drag that folder into the wall since it didn't go where it's supposed to. I'm going to take the brick wall, I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drop it into that group 2, and I'm going to call this my outer wall. And hopefully I can type today, make things go a little faster. Okay, so outer wall, I've got the brick wall into it. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this mask, I'm going to delete that ID mask off of it, and I'm going to select the outer wall. And I'm going to add a color ID mask to it. And this one was the bright blue, if I remember right. And you can see how it started applying things. Now it's all back to where it's supposed to be. Just the outer brick wall is now set up. Okay, so again, I'm going to find a material that I want to apply to the outside. And I'm going to put a stucco material. I used sort of an, I believe used an orange stucco on the inside of the house. I did right over here. I kind of like that material. I'm going to put it on the outside of the house. I might go inside and change the one on the inside later on, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and find a stucco material, and I think that one was called stucco wall. And I think I already have this in my library. If I don't, okay, so it is this, and I believe I had changed the color of it last time. So that's another option. I can go ahead and select it. And again, it went to the wrong spot, so I'm going to drag it and drop it into my outer wall folder so that it's in here with the brick wall, and the mask will only apply it to this section here. Okay, and I think I do want to change this color. So again, pretty simple to do. Select the material down here in the albedo section. Let's select the little color swatch there. I'm going to play around until I get a color that I like. And go sort of with a faded orange color again. Alright, so now I have this color assigned to the outside as a stucco material, but it's sort of blending in with the material below it, which is what it's designed to do when you first just drop it in there. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to go down here and we're going to apply a mask stack. You can also right click on it and you can add a mask stack that direction as well. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is, this time I'm going to add a mask component again. This time it's going to be a texture map. Okay, and this texture map is going to be a custom map. So I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick a library asset. And I'm going to browse my library. So it's a library asset. We're going to browse the library. And I'm not going to use a stucco. I'm going to use one of these imperfections down here. Okay, and you can play around with the different imperfections, and you're going to get a different result with different ones. But go with the look that I'm looking for. I'm going to look for a scratched. Okay, so I'm just going to look at my scratched ones, because what I'm looking for is something that has sort of this deep black kind of dugout area in the material itself. And this is a scratch painted material. There's a couple of these in here, and you can also go out to your library and find some more similar to this. This one right here, I'm going to use the one that has a little bit less scratching to it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and use this one, because we're going to layer this one. So I'm going to use the one that has a little bit more scratching to it. So I'm going to assign that to there. So now I have the stucco wall, and you can see that I have this kind of scratched effect happening right here. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to assign this to be a mask. So back in this section here, you click this down arrow that said gloss. I'm going to select mask. And we'll give it a second to get caught up. All right. So we've got some breaking in going on here, and but I'm not really getting that stucco appearance. It still looks like kind of brick laid over the top of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the material itself right here. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to push up blur underlying all the way up to the top. Okay. And now what we see is that we have more stucco material up on the top, but it looks really bad because I did not go over here to scale. I'm going to scale this down. We'll go with 0.05 on this one. And now I've got a little bit more of that stucco appearance. It looks more like stucco instead of a blurred mess. And we have quite a bit of breaking up from that mask effect that we did with the scratched material. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to go back into the selection right here where I set the mask. I'm going to select the mask. Right up here, I'm going to add a mask modifier. So I'm going to click on the mask modifier. And what I want to do is I want to pick the one that is the projection. Okay, and we've seen projection before. Projection is what we use to scale the different materials that we've been using and also adjust the radius or the angle of those materials to be in the direction that we want them to be in. So now what I want to do is take this projection and kind of play around with some of the same things we did before. Like right here, we have the ability to adjust the tiling, and we can do it on either the X or the Y, or we can do them together at the same time, and you can see how they're attached right here. We can just grab this slider and slide it. But I'm just going to go ahead and type in something like 3 and 3 into these boxes and just kind of scale it down a little bit. And then I can also play around with the way that it sits on my surface area, okay? And let's see, I think I have some really significant breakage back here, which I wouldn't mind having that more on the front of the house, as that's what we're going to be seeing right off the bat. So what I want to do is I'm going to play around with the offset on this and the X and the Y. So X up, Y left and right. So we can go ahead and just change it on one if we want to. You can just take the slider and slide it until you get the look that you want, until basically the texture itself scales around or moves around on the surface of your model. All right, so now I've got that done with this part of it. And like I said, we've already got the pillars since I used that material. But if you wanted to do something different with your pillars, you can jump in and do that as well. And I can demonstrate a process with the wall frames, or with the window frames and door frames, since even though they kind of have a scratched appearance, but you have to get up really close, from a distance, they look just too fresh, too new to go along with the wear that is already on the rest of this house. And so does the area around the edge of the roof here. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to do the same thing with the frames. I'm going to go ahead and you can see I just have this one section right here, this white cracked wall paint. I'm going to do pretty much the same process. I'm going to select the frames here. I'm going to add a new folder into the frames, click and drag it so that it's actually inside there. I'm going to move the material into the frames. Looks like I did all that backwards. Nice job. Let's try this again. I'm going to go ahead and grab the frames and apply it to the house. There we go. Now the frames should, not getting it there. There we go. Now I'm going to take group 3, apply it there. Alright, so I moved the frames all the way to the top. No big deal. I've got the group there, and I'm going to put the paint into the group. Double click on the group, and we're just going to call this wear on frames so we know what it is. And again, I want to use that same height map. It's the dark magenta. So I'm going to select this ID, select the dark magenta, and then down here I'm going to remove or delete the ID mask off the white cracked paint. Now for this one, I think we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and do another mask stack just like I did before. But I'm just going to do it on this particular material. And just something simple. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a noise on this one, I think, and just to see how the noise comes out and adding the kind of effect that we're looking for. So I'm going to select noise. Okay, and it looks like it's rebuilding right now. And now that I think about it, this isn't going to work out correctly because basically what happened is I have now set it up so that this material is actually not the one that's going to be overlaid with the damage done to the house. It's just the wrong thing. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that mask stack. We're going to go ahead and go back into our library, and we're going to find a different material that we want to use. And I'm going to go for, take off the imperfections. I'm going to look for something in wood because I want the underlying wood to show through. Now that I think about this, we're going to scratch and tear up the material. So let's go ahead and find wood material, something that is going to look appropriate. And I don't know why I also have imperfections selected. There we go. Something that has a little bit of wear to it. And I think this wooden panel right here is going to work. Okay, what should happen is it should overlay the top of the wood cracked here. Okay, and so you can see that I've got it so that it's set up here, but we've got to scale everything down a little bit. So I'm going to jump over here to this spot right here, and we're going to make this a 0.01, I believe is what the white paint was set to. Not really liking the scale of that, so let's see if we can get that to look a little better without causing a lot of issue on the scale. No. Let's see here. No, just leave that where it was. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back down to 0.01. Smooth that out a little bit. The main material is going to be the white paint anyway. So what we need to do is grab the white paint and we're going to stick it on top of the wood panel. And now that it's going to jump up back onto our surface. The next thing we want to do is for the white paint, what we want to do is add another mask stack. So I'm going to go ahead and select the mask stack. This time we're going to use a texture map. And again, we're going to pick a map from our, or an asset from our library. I'm going to browse to the library, and I'm going to find another imperfection. So an imperfection here, and I want to use I'm going to use a scratch painted one again. So this scratch painted material, I'm going to use that same one. I'm going to select it, and just going to give it a second here to fill in. You can see that it doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good actually. But I think we can bring it back down to scale, because right now I think it's a little bit too large. I think we have a lot of surface area exposed. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and add this time a projection right down here. So these little knobs right here, select those three little lines with the circles on them and select projection. And I'm going to scale this to a 5 on my X and Y repetitions. Okay. And that kind of brings that down a little bit. We can also rotate this. I'm going to pop this 90 degrees and rotate it to see how that looks, kind of adjust the way the paint is kind of damaged on the house around the window frames. And now you can see that we've got quite a few different things added to our house. And it's looking pretty good. You've learned quite a few different methods of how to kind of blend materials, add them, use materials as masks, blend the surface areas so that you can have different parts of the material showing through at different spots on the house, such as this brick wall and the stucco paint. And then also smart materials that are right here you can use as well, that kind of do the same effects that we have on some of the other parts of the house. Alright, so let's save everything. We're going to go to export. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're going to export the maps that we're going to need. So under export, this is going to be where the house maps, these different texture maps that we just created, are going to go. So right now they're going into my Maya projects, into my simple house, my source images, and my Quixel textures. And I'm going to select that folder because I did these once before, and these are under my source images. These are called Quixel textures. So I'm going to go ahead and go into that folder, and I'm going to create a new folder that I want to put it into, and this is going to be Warren textures. And I'm going to select that one to project these into, to export these into rather. All right, so with that, now it's going to export as an FBX format. I don't need to export the model, but you certainly could if you wanted to, but I already have the model. We also we have different types that we could export this as. If we did export the model, we can do FBX or OBJ. My textures down here, I'm going to make sure that I have the proper maps that I want. I'm going to select my metalness maps and make sure I have my albedo, which is my color, my roughness map, my normal, my displacements. I'm going to use the AO perhaps later on, and I also want to make sure I have my metalness one selected. I don't really need a gloss for this because we're going to be using mostly roughness because there's not a lot of gloss on this for one. The other thing we want to make sure is we have all of the texture maps selected. Now if you come back in and you make a modification to just say the floor or the roof or something, you can always re-export just that individual map by deselecting everything else and just selecting the map that you want. Alright, so with all of that, I also want to make sure that it's going to export in the pixel size that I'm working with. In this case, I'm using a 2048, but you could certainly export it up to 4K, 8K as well. Alright, so I'm going to leave it at 2048 for this particular project, just to save time and rendering speed later on when we go to render this in Maya. So I'm going to go ahead and export this to disk. Okay, and it'll take just a minute to do that. And my big head was in the way, so you didn't probably see any of the things I just did. So let me just step out of the way here for a second, and just to kind of talk through it while it's exporting it again. Over here is what I was talking about. Down here along the bottom, these are the maps, and down here is where we exported to disk. Okay, so again, up here is our folder selection. You should have been able to see that over the top of my head. And then as we get down here, you'll see where the different maps are that I've selected, and making sure that I also had these particular texture sets, all my texture sets, and then hit export. Down here is where you can choose your different size for your pixels. In this case, I'm doing 2048 as opposed to a 4K or 8K format. Alright, so it's almost done exporting 5 of 6, now 6 of 6 into my folder. Going into my source images, Quixel textures, my Warren textures. You see these are the maps that we're getting. And once this is done, I'm going to go ahead and pause and then come back on. Alright, so that should be it for the time. We've exported our maps just to double check to make sure they're in there. And again, if we go here to our 2D view, this is what we should have exported. These are our various maps with our different texture sets, rather, with our different texture maps supporting each one of these texture sets. Okay, so with that, now we should be done with this video. Again, if you have any questions, please shoot a message to me down in the comments section down below. I will try to answer it as soon as I see it. And again, if you missed any of my previous videos, you can always jump into Putting on the Fritz 3D visualization. Check them out. If you're only interested in Quixel, right here, sorry, wrong hand again, right here, video number 6 is where we started the Quixel piece of this, from importing the model all the way through to doing our base layers, and then as you just saw, we went ahead and added some additional details using Quixel. All right, if you liked what you saw, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.